Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Wing, and we're about to do all three Punic Wars in 3 minutes. This is pretty ambitious, but Delenda es Carthago, Carthage must be destroyed, or we're going to get through this. All right, the first Punic War is 264 to 241 BC. Here we have Rome, obviously the expanding power, or the kind of the growing, rising power here in the northern end of the Mediterranean Ocean, and this is where it comes to blows, of course, with Carthage, the major economic powerhouse in the southwestern portion of the Mediterranean Ocean. And they're going to come fight over the island of Sicily. In particular, the rebel city of Messana is going to ask Rome for help bringing Rome into the island of Sicily. There's the city-state of Syracuse, which is under a tyrant. And, of course, the Carthaginians are also on the island of Sicily. And essentially, there's a huge cluster and a massive war breaks out here on the island. In the surrounding waters, there's massive naval battles that are taking place. Rome, which is not a naval power at all, is actually learning to become a naval power. Battle of Economus really comes to mind, which is one of the largest naval battles in history, as Rome defeats the Carthaginian navy. And ultimately, Roman forces are able to drive towards Carthage. And just outside, Carthage, they're stopped in the area of Tunis, what is now Tunis. And the Roman, one of the Roman consuls, who's commanding the legions, gets captured, and the war effort there stagnates. And eventually, Hamilcar Barca, the father of the famous Hannibal, who we'll see in the next war, then takes Carthaginian forces back to Sicily. And there's the war kind of prolongs and stagnates out on the island of Sicily. And eventually, Carthage asks for terms. And in these terms, a lot of their navy is diminished. They have to pay Rome, all these fines and dues and everything else like that for starting the war, which is dubious at best. And ultimately, it's going to set us up for the Second Punic War. The Second Punic War is 218 to 202 BC. This starts out actually in Spain, where Hannibal Barca, the son of the famous general we were just talking about, actually kicks off the war. And this is the famous one where as Carthaginian power expands in Spain, they effectively make mines and colonies and all sorts of stuff in order to pay the Romans back all these fines that were placed upon them from the first treaty, from the first Punic War. Hannibal Barca then takes his forces, famously, his elephants and the rest of the Carthaginian army, and goes over the northern side of Italy through the Alps, and the famous paintings with the elephants in the mountains, and goes through and slaughters, of course, thousands and thousands of Romans in Italy, and vast, amounts of territory here is involved. And ultimately, the Rome never capitulates. And then from this desperate time becomes a young man named Scipio Africanus the Elder, or who will become Africanus the Elder. And he actually takes Roman forces and then eventually drives all the way back to Carthage. And Hannibal is then called back from Italy and brought back to Carthage, and his forces are defeated by Scipio Africanus, the Elder now, who will be the Elder, at the Battle of Zama. And from this, Carthage effectively is pretty well vanquished. Their forces are diminished. Their treasuries are absolutely wiped out by the end of this war. Rome places even further sanctions on them. They're not allowed to really make any aggressive actions upon anyone who's considered an ally of Rome, which will actually cause problems in the Third Punic War, and sets that up as well. Ultimately, here, then we're moving on to the Third Punic War. The opening phrase, Delenda est Carthago, which is the famous words of Cato the Elder. After every speech in the Roman Senate, he would end it with that, which means Carthage must be destroyed. And here at the Third Punic War is the Roman population actually became, and the Roman Senate in particular, was becoming very concerned with the economic growth that Carthage was making even after the Second Punic War. And they did not want to find themselves in the situation that they had found themselves at the opening of the Second Punic War, which was ultimately that Carthage had grown in power despite the sanctions that were being placed upon them. And so here in the Third Punic War, for several years, the adopted grandson of Scipio Africanus the Elder, now this grandson being Scipio Africanus the Younger, he'll obtain that title after this war, lays siege to Carthage and eventually breaks down the walls and gets into the city, and the city is absolutely leveled. Of course, the population, whoever's not massacred in the population or kills himself, on these huge pyres and stuff that are going on, of course, is going to be sold into slavery. And this is where we get the myths of the salt blocks being pounded into the ground and nothing grows there. And it ultimately vanquished Rome's most famous and most potentially dangerous rival that the Roman Empire had ever faced. And this is, you can't really say the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic had ever faced. And this is probably one of the first major expansions of Roman power into an actual true empire form.